Sound check.
You know, I restarted it.
I'd like to welcome everybody out
I'm on the
tonight.
street.
Thank Diane for drilling up all of these folks together to get together and come on out and talk about this judicial system and voice our rights as we the people. I'm going to pass it on over to Diane to say hello and introduce herself to everyone. Miss Diane Gochin.
Thanks for coming out, everybody who's here. Hopefully there will be more people joining us. I know a lot of you, and most of you have started doing this. It's not a club that you wanted to join. You just kind of get pulled into it like I have. I've been trapped in the courts for 8 years for a divorce with a judge whose divorce only took 6 months in the same county. So, and that's the honest truth. And I think I'm the only litigant that's spoken in front of the conduct board here, except for Mr. Breezy would come out. He's the chief counsel. They recused that judge and they told me they're sorry, but they have no restitution mechanism for my losses by this judge that held up my mortgage. But I'm not here to talk about my case, although people find it fascinating. I found everybody's cases fascinating because they're all basically coming from the same place. All the problems are coming from the same place, and people don't realize it. Our economy, our taxes, everything is being controlled in this building behind us, because what we have here is the Supreme Court, we have the ABA, our association in here. Those entities have, especially the courts, separated themselves from the checks and balance system in this country. And I'm going to let Andy talk about that later, but he'll talk about the constitutional amendment that started it. There's a lot of things that people can do, such as writing to their senators and their representatives instead of waiting for other people to do it. They're always focused on the budget and their local taxes. We wouldn't be having so many problems if we did not have a non-governmental agency called the American Bar Association, which is a private nonprofit that is actually running the government. They are licensing attorneys. They are the licensing organization of attorneys. Doctors, hairdressers, car mechanics, they're all licensed by the state except for lawyers. They are licensed by this nonprofit organization that has no place in our government. And this has been continual probably for 40, 50 years. And until we get rid of that association, the Bar Association, it's the American Bar, they control the state bars. Every state has a bar. We have Pennsylvania Bar, and the Pennsylvania Bar controls the county bars. So it's one big club. And when you walk into a courtroom, even if you have a lawyer, they don't represent you. That lawyer is there to make a profit for the Bar Association. They're there to pay back. They're there for, the judges have gotten campaign contributions from just about every one of these lawyers and law firms. And the way they get paid back by that judge is trapping you in court, making money even if you're in a criminal lawsuit. These defense attorneys are getting paid by the hour. It's a system that has not worked in a long, long time. And there's ways to change it, but the problem is that this branch of government behind me in this $120 million judicial center that they built, surrounded by poverty. It's like a castle if you've ever been in there. We certainly didn't need it. There were enough empty buildings here in Harrisburg for them to make themselves a center in. Instead of taking that money from people, they built themselves a castle because they are in fact operating like a monarchy here. They are a monarchy. They are answering to no one. They are, I have a feed that I'm on my email, and it's class action lawsuits, and they are coming in every day, nonsense class action lawsuits. The people in the lawsuits get $1, and if you look at the small print on the bottom, the law firm gets $6 million. And they are continually instigating these cases, driving up the cost of healthcare, driving up the cost of cars with car recalls. If you get a zipper stuck on you, they've got a class action lawsuit against the toilet company. I mean, it's just one thing after the other. And as I watch the governor focusing on the budget, I'm thinking we wouldn't have a budget problem if these lawyers weren't driving up the cost of everything. Every single thing is coming from the judiciary is causing all of our problems, and it's not being recognized. People are going in all different directions. They have all these theories of what's going on. But this is really it right here. And the reason why I did this is to try to get more people to start saying and putting out the word. I did it this summer. Andy Ostrowski ran this year. He ran for U.S. Congress on a court reform platform. Until people get involved in it, they just don't get it. They just don't get it. You talk to them and they'll say, well, why aren't you divorced after 8 years, There's people here that I've met 18 years in court, 20 years in court. One man, 20 years in court, has never had a hearing. He's in New York, though. But, there's nobody following the law. And when they don't follow the law, there's no one to go to, except right here in the Judicial Conduct Board. But the Judicial Conduct Board is all judges and lawyers. Except for one. He's a country club owner that paid $32,000 to the last two gubernatorial campaigns, and they put him on the board. And he's been on the conduct board for 2 governors have appointed him. Hopefully this governor will throw him out because, he's not, very educated. He's just paid money to get on this board. There are no citizen representatives on the Judicial Conduct Board. It's supposed to have 6 citizen representatives, but there aren't. There's nobody on there that represents people that are being trapped in these courts. So I was giving out these handouts. There's things on here that you all probably know about. The biggest problem is judicial immunity. 6,000 children went to jail illegally, and nobody went to jail for that. They went to jail for tax evasion. Well, you should have been able to arrest them for false imprisonment. You can't arrest them for anything, nothing, which is insane. No one is above the law in this country, and the people did not consent to judicial immunity. The lawyers put it in there, the lawyers that are judges. Some of the other major issues are unregulated attorney fees. I mean, what reason is there for a lawyer ever to end a case? Why would you end a case when you're billing by the hour? And then the judge does them a favor and just lets them keep billing, of course, because they got their judicial campaign money from that lawyer. So, in my case, they just kept billing and billing and billing. And they're billing for overhead, they're billing for 100 hours a week. I mean, it's ridiculous, the whole thing. And it's amazing how few people are addressing this. We can't get the media to address it. I wanted to show you, it says Lawless America. This is one of the first groups that I joined, and this man tried to address it. He said, we got to make our own media. So that's what we have to do. But we need more people to participate and come out. The nonsense about, no video cameras in the courtrooms. Everybody's got a cell phone. You're not allowed to take it out. There's someone here that's going to speak, her son was interrogated, and they were writing it down on paper. Why isn't there a video camera and a recording everywhere? I mean, it's there, but they're not letting you know that it's there, and they're telling you they don't have it. There's no reason for electronics not to be used. They're not using it because the judges and lawyers can't deceive people about what really happened. I'm not sure, why they have not instituted this constitutionally, why the governor isn't saying anything. We all know what's happening with Kathleen Kane. She's becoming a victim of this system, and I've been watching it very closely, what's going on with her. And if you haven't been on her webpage, she says, she has a webpage she put up, it's called thetruthAboutKathleenKane.com. She says, if they can do this to me, I can't imagine what is happening to people that don't have the resources to fight this. And what's happening is there's people living in their cars, there's people that are in foreclosure. It's just become a cycle. And it's been very hard to break. And it's not going to break until more people get involved. And stop worrying about the budget and education. Those things will fall into line if we have a legal system. Without a legal system, we don't have anything. And right now, we don't have a legal system. We have, as my sign says, a crime syndicate. It's so far embedded into the system that it's just, when you walk into court, you have no chance of getting any kind of justice. There should not be a price on justice. Two things do not mix with money, and that is your health and your freedom. But in this country, we've become a joke. We've become an absolute joke. You have to pay for justice. That's ridiculous. One of the other issues on here is So we're talking about moving the Bar Association from licensing. That absolutely has to go. Pro se litigants. We have the right to represent ourselves. I've been representing myself for over 5 years, and I can tell you that every case I probably have won, but it's being sandbagged by a judge. I have a case in federal court that I clearly won. I put the opposing attorney hiding evidence, filed a motion for default judgment. They're just sitting on it for months. They'll just sit on it. And every order that I get from them says pro se litigant up at the top. What does it matter if I'm pro se, self-represented? I have the right. I'm not paying into the Bar Association, that's why. If you're not paying into the bar, you don't get justice. I will never use an attorney again. And I help people for nothing. So they can't arrest me for UPL. Unlicensed practice of law. Why do you need a license to practice law? That's restricting attorneys being able to actually help you because they are oppressed by, they have to follow these rules that were put on unilaterally by the Bar Association that the public never agreed to. Right, well, we say we don't need a license to practice law, Doreen, but they say we need one. And you really should not need one. I mean, you don't need a license to put a Band-Aid on yourself. You should need a license to practice law. And it wouldn't be so complicated if they weren't unilaterally making the procedural rules that are blocking our access to the substantive law. You can't get past all the nonsense. I mean, at this point, the Constitution guarantees a right to jury trial for any amount over $20, but they had put a ruling, instead of saying, that you must get a jury trial, it says you may get a jury trial, allowing the judge to decide if you can have a jury trial. That's totally against the United States Constitution. Even in a divorce, which I went through, there is a provision for a jury trial, but the judge said no. She's been blocking it for 8 years. They're not following the Constitution at all. And, people are spinning their wheels trying to figure out what is wrong with this country. This is it. I mean, it's not brain surgery. You have people in this state, we're like 50 separate little countries. So you've got Pennsylvania here with its own constitution, and they are continually, skewing the Constitution in their favor by using these procedural rules. These rules are not laws. They're rules made by attorneys. And they're keeping the public out of all these rule-making committees where we should be having a say. They're even keeping the legislature out. If you listen to the induction speech of our new Chief Justice Saylor, he even says there are legislators that believe that we can't regulate ourselves. Well, no, you can't. You have shown policing yourselves to be a complete disaster. I believe you have more judges removed from the bench and in jail here than any other state. I mean, we have the entire Philadelphia traffic court removed. We have 2 Supreme Court justices that one's in jail, and the other one was removed from a porn gate. I mean, there's just an immense amount of judicial corruption, and they still think that they can run their own show. Well, let's run our own show and run them out of town. So. Yes.
I've never been involved in anything.
Yeah, there's people think it's England. It doesn't even matter if it's England. They're here, wherever they are. So I also think that one of the other things that we do is to cap civil lawsuits, especially to 1 year. And if the judge does not have that case under 1 year, they get their pay docked. That'll stop them from the hourly billing. 1 year and it should be over. 8 years, 10 years is ridiculous. There's no, they're supposed to be reporting how long their cases are. They don't even report it. I had a judge removed for that. She never reported it on her Rule 703 that for 4 years she sat on the motion. And nothing happened to her. She got a letter in the mail. What she should have is her assets taken.
I'm going to break her up in that
That's
she
what
shouldn't
should
be talking,
happen.
so I mean, that's good. So what we'll do is
Now, the bishop is going to speak from the injured, if I get this right, I was getting a text. Who wants to come up and say? Andy, do you want to come up?
That's my union.
We'll let Andy Ostrowski come up. Andy ran for the United States Congress in District 11 this summer, and he's going to run for the Senate, right?
like the fourth time in a year I've attended one of these court reform rallies. And everybody, you know, the couple handfuls of people who are here know the pain and the suffering that are caused when we lose our due process rights in the courts. But we got a couple handfuls of people out here. We got to find a way to start inspiring people before their rights are lost in the courts to get out here and understand what we're dealing with and what we're talking about here. As Diane said, none of us are here voluntarily. I, kind of happen to think that I am. This is my chosen profession, the practice of law. I'm currently a non-licensed suspended lawyer, but I didn't start this fight when I became suspended, when I lost my license. I started this fight while I held my license, while I started representing people who have suffered the deprivation of their individual rights in the courts and have had to go in those courts, the federal courts and the state courts, time and time and time again, and have their rights not recognized by the courts. We are losing the biggest problem that we're having in this country is the incremental destruction of our individual rights. And it's happening because we are losing control of our courts. Now, we have to be mindful of why the historical context in which we're here today, and that context is what we've seen in the past year. You got that sound, guys? What we've seen in the past year from Ferguson.
It was getting your feedback. I apologize.
No problem. The historical context of where we are here is what we've seen starting in Ferguson, Missouri, and even before that, the Trayvon Martin case and all the cases that come in between. And here we are a year later, and we saw what happened in Baltimore last week. And we have some very serious issues going on in our courts that we've discussed. And that's one thing that needs to be focused on is the role of the courts in these situations, these social injustice situations that we're experiencing. The courts have allowed what I'm going to call conservative activist judges, for years and years and decades even, you hear about these so-called liberal activist justices who are expanding the meaning of the Constitution beyond its original meaning. Well, we've got some conservative activist justices in this modern judiciary that have expanded the power and authority of the police and our government in contrast to the rights of the individual. And if we had an open court system where people who were beat up on the street by a police officer and didn't suffer $1 million injury, or people who were retaliated against reporting public corruption, and you could go into the courts and the courts would stand on the side of the law enforcement and the government every time, we probably wouldn't be having these problems to the extent that we do. It's been 50 years. That's what we're hearing about. 50 years ago is when we went through this great civil rights movement in this country, and it stalled for 50 years. It stalled when Martin Luther King said, "I got to the top of the mountaintop. I climbed the mountain and he got to the top, but he never saw the promised land." And here we are 50 years later, and we're still not seeing the promised land. And that's because of the malfunction and dysfunction in the courts. And we've got to find a way, and again, it's hard to be out here preaching to the same choir. We've got to find a way to inspire people outside of these circles that we're talking about to understand what we are talking about. To understand that the civil rights movement in this country died and is dead, and racism still exists, and bigotry still exists, and inequity still exists across this system because of failings in the courts. And it started also 50 years ago, around the time of this civil rights movement, which was a great movement. It was a great movement. People were coming out and speaking. You go up into this neighborhoods of Harrisburg, and now they're peddling drugs and sitting on the steps. They were out talking, and it was awesome. It was really awesome to see what happened in Baltimore last week, and to see what went down in Ferguson, and to see people coming out of their homes all over the country and spending a few hours away from their televisions and their computers and caring about what's happening in the cities in America. And it's not just a city problem, it's a problem across all geographic areas in this country. And we've got to find a way to inspire that. We've got to find a way. This is what motivated me to run for Congress. And you know what? I don't care that I'm speaking to a group of about 25 people right now, and that I've spoken to groups of about 40 and 50 and 60 and 20 and 10 over the past year and a half, because these are the issues that are affecting this country. Our inability to get access to the courts. About 47, 48 years ago, there was a provision enacted, Diane commented upon it generally, Article 5, Section 10C of the Pennsylvania Constitution, which put the judiciary and lawyers in complete control over everything that happened. I'm sure many of you activists out here, and there are many, many more out there who I've been in touch with, Diane has been in touch with, who has been in touch with, who many of you, Terance and Todd, have been in touch with over the years here, and they're not out here today because they can't pay their bills. They can't afford to come to Harrisburg to attend a rally because these courts have taken their livings. These courts, they don't even have gas money to get to a rally to stand up and support their rights and their interests. And we have a duty and a responsibility. I don't care if I'm standing here speaking alone next time. I'll be here at this next rally, and I'll be at every rally in the future, because there are some structural problems that are affecting us and our rights in this country. And the people across the street, these people poking over the wall there, they might not understand what we're talking about. And there's some esoteric concepts, to be sure, when you're talking about Article 5, Section 10C, and separation of powers, and what it means to have given the judiciary complete and exclusive control over itself. But these are real basic principles to our constitutional republic, and that's what it is. These are Republican, small Republican principles and balances. When all of you who have tried to go and sit in an office of a legislator, or write a letter to a senator, or get the ear of a congressman, when you talk to them, they look at you with a blank stare in the face, not even knowing how to address what you're talking about. And they say, well, that's a court matter, I can't get involved. Damn it, you can't get involved. And the court, they don't understand this, because the courts have created this whole nebulous scheme of control that does not permit anybody from outside the system to come in and access the system. Well, you know what, legislator across the street in Congress down in Washington, D.C., you do have authority. You do have complete authority to come in and put some checks into this system, some checks and balances. Governors are the same problem. Diane commented upon Attorney General Kane. Darn it, she should be out here. She knows what we're talking about today. And she makes that comment that if they're doing this to me, I can't imagine how they're, what they must be doing to some of you out there. Well, you know what, we can imagine in Ms. Kane. And we want you out here as our voice and our champion. I stand behind Kathleen Kane in her fights, but she needs to be more aggressive in her fights. She needs to start investigating judges. She needs to start investigating disciplinary boards. She needs to start getting to the core of these problems in the system. I've written her a letter. I've tried to call. I want to get an audience with her. We will stand behind her. She will tap into a wealth and a wellspring of public support if she starts going after this problem the right way. So these are the kind of things that we need to start talking about. And again, I'm out here preaching to the choir again, and you guys across the street and you guys walking out of this building, take 3 words that I say and go tell someone. Because one of these times we are going to have not 30 people, we're going to have 300 people. And the next time we're going to have 3,000 people. And I'm running for office again next year. Diane got a little ahead of herself telling everybody what I was going to do. I'm not quite sure what dynamic or what dimension or what step it's going to take. But it's going to be an office where we can have a voice. I might be a suspended office, I might be a suspended lawyer running against Attorney General Kane if she doesn't get up and start doing some of this stuff. I might be, an independent against Mr. Toomey and Mr. Sestak and the fellow from up in Allentown. I might be running against Luke Barletta again, whose plans have not been taken hold, because I stand here as somebody with some ideas and thoughts and some feelings and cares in my heart about what's wrong with this country. I know you're right. I know in this system that have allowed, what was the number, 6,000 kids to be thrown in jail, and that kids got kids for cash scandal, that we threw 2 judges in jail, and there was a lot of hoopla and a lot of celebration about, how great this system of justice is and how it works, but it doesn't, because we didn't get to the heart of the problem. There hasn't been a credible study on what really happened in that situation. before 2009, and well before the year 2000, and well before the 1990s and the 1980s. We have rules that are set up to protect and preserve the practice of law. We have rules that are created to cut off your rights in the courts. When you hire a lawyer, and I got to tell you folks, I love being a lawyer. I love practicing law. I love standing and helping people. I never mistreated a judge. I never mistreated a client. I never mistreated an opposing attorney, except maybe sometimes to try to give them a little lecture about what I thought about their ethics and integrity. But when it came to honoring the practice and respecting the practice, I respected it as much as anybody who has preceded me, as much as anybody who will follow me. And I am not up here as just a disgruntled, suspended lawyer taking some shots at the system. It's a system, like I'd like to say, and things that come to me over the past year is God works in mysterious ways. And, from the inside, it's very difficult to control this system or to affect change in this system. Because every one of you, whether you know it or not, every time you hire a lawyer, you're compromising your constitutional rights, because that lawyer is not as free to speak in those courts as you are. And Diane talked about the abuse of pro se litigants, and you should. I mean, you have been, for lack of a better term, you brainwashed this entire country into believing that you need lawyers, that you're going to lose your rights if you don't have a lawyer. Well, you don't. You people out there, you know how you've been affected. You can read books, you can read law, you can understand law and procedure, and if all you need to do is walk into a court where you're given the same access and the same rights as everybody else, but you're not. So there are some real structural, fundamental changes that need to happen in this country. And I mean, my plans are much bigger than that. We have let's talk a little bit about some of the political aspects of this. And we talk about Trans-Pacific Partnership and rights of corporations and all that kind of thing. But the rights of corporations, for example, they have been expanded with the control of bar associations and courts. That's why we already have these huge multinational corporations with unlimited liability and perpetual duration and all those things. But I'm getting a little far afield from the core of my principles. I'll talk a lot about these core justice issues, and it's justice that we're talking about here are everything we need to stand for as a free and open society. I become, I reflect upon some of the biblical things that I read along the way, and I read one translation of Psalm 4 that says, I forget what line it is, it says, make justice your sacrifice and trust in the Lord. And witting or not, we all have sacrificed for justice. And you know that once you get in and you make that, somebody takes your rights from you, somebody takes your children, somebody takes your home, somebody beats you up and there's no redress for you, somebody fires you for speaking out of public corruption, you know what you have lost. And it becomes a fight inside of you because it strikes at the core of your God-given rights and severs that bond between you and your Creator. And it's that justice that brought you here, that involuntary sacrifice that brought you here, that continue to make it your sacrifice, continue to do what's right. We are doing God's work, and trust in the Lord, be persistent, be patient, just keep talking about it. I'm not going anywhere. I'm going to always be here until we get some change in the system. And I'm going to I'm going to be here, and I'll be at the next rally, and I'll be at the next one after that. And thank those of you who have come out, and let's try to get some momentum and keep this stuff going.
All right, that was Andy Ostrowski. Let's hear it again for Andy Ostrowski. We're going to liven up a little bit here. It's Monday. I know that we had a rough weekend, and I know a lot of you folks look like you're about to go to sleep. But that's why I'm about to call Terance Healy over, and I'm going to beg him to do
establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare, and secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity, to ordain and establish this Constitution for the United States of America. And I'm not going to do all the Schoolhouse Rock, but that's the part that I remember best. Oh, I'm just a bill. We're going to have to work on that. That'll come next. I'm almost closer to coming in and breaking into a version of Dexy's Midnight Runners in the Emerald Express by changing the word Eileen to Kathleen. Because right now, the name I type most often seems to be Kathleen Kane. She is an attorney general who is trying to do her job, and she is being told, quite simply, shut up, Kathleen. And I can't wait for the day that Kathleen Kane opens her mouth. Kathleen Kane has so much to say. She is an honorable person. She's got a lot of people pissed at her. She's got a lot of people in Montgomery County very angry with her. And what has happened to Kathleen Kane? She was doing so well. She was one of the rising stars in the state. And then everybody started to turn against her. What happened was quite simply, Kathleen Kane was silenced. She was ordered to silence by a court. Ordered to silence by unidentified courts, unidentified orders, several of them. And what happened then was a law which had been proven unconstitutional regarding confidentiality of information was transferred. And Kathleen Kane, the person, was ordered to be silent and to neglect the responsibilities of her office of Attorney General. They didn't order the Attorney General to silence. They ordered Kathleen Kane, the individual. They didn't order the Attorney General to silence because that would violate the entire legislature. The legislature created the position of Attorney General with certain responsibilities. What the courts have done, secretly, unidentified, hiding, is they have demanded Kathleen Kane continue confidentiality of information when it comes to certain cases. Specifically, Healy v. Healy, Healy v. Miller, and soon to be Commonwealth of Pennsylvania versus Healy. My name's Terance Healy. There's a relation there. What happened was, as my 9-year divorce was progressing, we start the 10th year at the end of the month, no cards, no letters. We discovered there was something happening. I was being ignored. The law was being ignored. Procedures were being ignored. My rights were being ignored. And nobody would listen. Turns out, about 8 years in, there's a law called Rule 1.6, Confidentiality of Information, of the Rules of Professional Conduct. Now, these are lawyers that only the lawyers have to follow, or they're laws that only the lawyers have to follow, which kind of puts them in a book that most people don't read. And I know early on in my divorce, I skimmed them, went on, didn't have to worry about it. The problem is, the Rules of Professional Conduct were adopted in Pennsylvania in 1987 and enacted in 1988 by the Supreme Court of Pennsylvania through their Article 5, Section 10C authority. The problem with that authority is that only permits them to do things that are constitutional. And when they enacted Rule 1.6, it had a collateral, unconstitutional effect on my rights. It stepped on them. It destroyed them. It ignored them. This has gone on for 30 years in the state of Pennsylvania. My rights were being ignored by a law, an unconstitutional law that should never have been passed. The entire Pennsylvania Supreme Court was notified of this law. It shouldn't have required more than a letter. There is no procedure to remove an unconstitutional law when it has been enacted by the Supreme Court. There is also no authority for the Supreme Court to enact an unconstitutional law. They're not permitted to affect my substantive rights. And boy did they. They annihilated them. There is no way for the legislature to take any action against the judiciary unless they change the Constitution. At least that's the story. And I would imagine we've all heard the same stories. I don't have jurisdiction. That is part of an ongoing investigation. I'm sorry, I can't help you. The problem with that is, those are the excuses. They're not the facts, they are the excuses. My rights are endowed and protected and secured by the Constitution of the United States. The Pennsylvania Constitution supports those and agrees not to infringe upon them. However, when the Supreme Court enacted this law, maybe they didn't know. Maybe they thought that confidentiality of information was an important thing. But it turns out they knew damn well what they were doing. It was the trial lawyers during the Kutek Commission, as they were pulling the rules of professional conduct together, that indicated we can't have these two clauses. They need to be removed. Mr. Kutek,
ladies and gentlemen. Good afternoon. We don't have to be quiet. We're American citizens. Amen. I'm here today at the seat of power in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, here in Harrisburg. And I want to recognize America Rebirth Tour, Pennsylvania Court Watch. I want to recognize all the organizations involved in putting this together on today, as well as the City of Philadelphia, the City of Harrisburg, New Generation Foundation, the veterans groups, the Interdenominational Ministers Conference of Greater Harrisburg, of which I'm now President Emeritus, the Gospel Truth Global Apostolic Network, and the Victory Outreach Christian Church, of which I pastor here in Harrisburg. I'm thankful today for all of you that came from various parts of our state. Whether you came from Philadelphia, Scranton, York, Harrisburg, Lancaster, Carlisle, Lehigh Valley, or wherever you came from, we're thankful that you made it today. I want to recognize my mother, who's here, and she's yet in the land of the living, off to my left here, to your right. Thank God for her, and thankful for one of the ministers from my church that's here right now, Minister Kathy, and my attorney over there, Attorney Sandra Thompson. And just like police officers in any other profession, there are the good and there are the bad. She's one of the good. Because when I needed a lawyer last year, she represented me. And guess what? She represented me in a unique case that never happened to any pastor in the history of Harrisburg, in the history of Pennsylvania, and some people say in the history of America. And she did it free of charge. You ought to clap your hands. She's a lawyer and she's a friend, and she happens to be the first vice president of the Pennsylvania State NAACP. Thank you for all of you, for Andy and everyone here, Cedric. We're gathered here in Harrisburg, and we're faced with a list of crises and calamities, trials and troubles that's facing our nation, that's going on right here in Pennsylvania. And on top of all of that, we have injustice, we have discrimination, racism, sexism, and other mounting problems that are not going to disappear. We have to face these problems once and for all and fix them. Our nation is crumbling, and we all know this. We see it on the news, we see it in our neighborhoods, we see it when we travel. And the problems that we've ignored for far too long are now haunting this nation. I've traveled all over the world. I oversee churches in 57 nations. I've been on every continent but one. And all over the world, people are asking questions. What's happening to America? They're asking me all over Africa, all over Asia, South America, the Caribbean, everywhere I go. What is going on in America? We can't ignore it. We can't laugh it off. We can't play it off. We have to face it once and for all. From Ferguson to New York, to Baltimore to Philadelphia, and right here to Harrisburg, and with hundreds of cities along the path. We've seen police misconduct, we've seen police brutality, but that's not all of the story. We now live in a system of prosecutor misconduct and overcharging. Every time we turn around, someone is being overcharged. The rule of the day now is throw out as many charges as you can against one person and see which sticks. You know it to be true. People are no longer considered innocent until proven guilty. There are 45,000 collateral consequences for having a criminal record. And that happens to people who even end up later have been found out to be proven innocent. It still follows them. The system is broke. I said the system is broke.
Amen.
And we ought not be afraid to admit it. The system is broke. The good news is we can fix it. And I know we don't have the numbers that we expected, and many of us invited a lot of people, but that's all right. Every great movement in American history started with a few people. A few people who were determined, who were committed, who were faithful, and said, we're not going to give up.
Amen.
Our criminal justice system is now a criminal injustice system. Others are now calling it a criminal prosecution system. 96% of all convictions come by plea bargaining. Prosecutors are running the show, and many times even innocent people choose not to fight the system because they know this system is stacked against them, especially if they are poor people. So it does not matter the color if you're poor. Because if you're poor, you're treated the same. Whether you're poor white, poor black, poor Hispanic, poor Asian, the common denominator is poor. And when you're poor, you're not given the same advantage. Poor people cannot afford a dream team. Poor people can't buy their way out, pay someone off. The system is broke, I repeat. School board budgets, they come through the courts. Prison budgets come through the courts. When are the courts going to be held accountable? All of America, people are complaining about the police. But that's not the whole problem. There are some good police officers, and guess what? They're the ones that end up getting charged. And they end up getting overcharged, the good ones. So the system's broke. All lives matter today. Black lives, brown lives, red lives, yellow lives, white lives, and any other color lives. Police lives matter. Lawyers' lives matter. All lives matter. And until this nation acknowledges that, we're not living up to what the founding fathers laid out. We're not living up to the dream and the ideal of what America's supposed to be. Somebody asked, I want to hear you ask me why. Say a little bit louder. Why is America closing schools and building prisons? Why is America the prison capital of the world? Why is America the capital punishment capital of the world? Why does America incarcerate more youth than any other nation in the world? Why is America incarcerating homeless people? Why is America incarcerating mentally ill people? Why are there sentencing disparities allowed to exist in our nation? That's the question today, is why. And I speak to you here, I speak to those walking by, those on your lunch hour and on your break. There are too many disparities in our nation. And we can no longer say that we're a great nation and a pinnacle nation if we're not willing to mete out justice to each and every person, down to the poorest. There must be justice for all. Amen. Or really there's justice for none. The school to prison pipeline is not only discriminatory, it is evil and it is wicked. I want you to know that prisons are evidence-based worst practice. It's not working. We keep building more prisons, it's not working. Prisons are not reforming people. I got news for you, we need to reform the prisons. America for a long time has talked about other nations, but I've been to those nations. I've been all over the world, and I've been to nations where their school systems are better, their families are better, everything is better. And it's amazing that countries we used to laugh at, they're ahead of us educationally. The only thing we're tops at now is incarcerating people. I know the Secretary of Corrections personally in Pennsylvania, and I've heard him on a couple of occasions admit that more than 35% of the people in state prisons do not belong there. Now we ought to pay attention to of that because he served under a Republican governor and now a Democratic governor. And he said the same thing then, and he's saying it now. Why are we incarcerating people? I'm talking about non-violent offenders. There are alternatives. There are alternatives. There are things that work. I declare to you on this day that mass incarceration is really another form of genocide. Look at the process of genocide. Classification, symbolization, dehumanization, organization, polarization, preparation, extermination, and denial. All of this is present in the mass prison industrial complex. All of this is present in mass incarceration. And if anyone denies it, well, that's step 8, denial. Mass incarceration may be America's worst problem right now. There are rich people, yes, getting rich off of incarcerating poor people. Yep. The rich are not building these prisons for their children. I tell you on today that while all this is going on, whether you believe in him or not, God is watching. I'm not afraid to say God. Amen. The founding fathers said God. And just about every president quoted from the Bible. Someone's going to give an account on the day of judgment for what's going on in our nation. Our nation, if you check its history, we were formed as a constitutional republic. We were formed to be a self-governing republic. I could call on witnesses. I could call on William Penn. William Penn is who Pennsylvania is named after. He established this colony way back in 1681 to 1683. He sought to put his Quaker ideals into practice, and he called Pennsylvania his holy experiment. Can I ask you a question today? What looks holy about Pennsylvania today?
Nothing. The rose.
Nothing. Oh yes, the rose. Holy.
Pennsylvania is called the Keystone State. Whether you know it or not, Pennsylvania is the key to this nation. The turning point in the Revolutionary War happened in Pennsylvania. The turning point in the Civil War happened in Pennsylvania. The nation's first capital was in Pennsylvania. And if Pennsylvania doesn't rise up and be the leader and be the example for the rest of the nation, we'll be in great trouble. Yes, I call on the Holy Bible, as George Washington did, as Abraham Lincoln did, and mostly every president in our nation's history did. Scripture says righteousness exalts a nation, but sin is a reproach to any people. It says when the righteous are in authority, the people rejoice.
Yes. Right.
Well, if we're not rejoicing, maybe we have to look at who's in authority.
All right.
I call on the late Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. He once wrote a book called Strength to Love. You have to have strength to love. I love my enemies, in spite of what they tried to do and what they did to me. I speak to people that try to destroy my life. Many of you that don't know me, I lost 62 relatives in the last 5 years. And on the very night when I was grieving some relatives that died in a bad car accident in Georgia, I'm sitting at home by myself. My wife passed away, my uncle passed away, and I mean my family was just decimated. And while I'm sitting at home, the same night I'm grieving, I get a knock at the door from a couple police cars that take me to the site of a building our church once owned. Said the roof had collapsed. Got to the site of it. The roof did not collapse. A couple bricks had fell. And in front of all these police cars and ambulances and fire trucks and the media, they did a perp walk, arrested me to try to shame me, to try to destroy me, to try to bankrupt me. Because I spoke out. Because I was one of the people who spoke out against voter suppression laws. Because I spoke out on behalf of the labor unions. Because I spoke out for minority contractors. Because I spoke out for small business owners. Because I fought for families. That's how I got treated. But it didn't stop there. And I don't even blame the police because they did what they were ordered to do. Just like soldiers do what they're ordered to do. So I don't blame them. They were sent to do that. They were sent to destroy me. And then I was smeared in the media. Let's not leave the media out. Because after the police and local government did their thing, then the media jumped right on. And the media jumped right on, and then they tried to destroy me. Even one of the papers I once was a guest columnist of.
The only paper.
And that's the only newspaper in Harrisburg. Then after that, then I had to go through all of that overcharging, things that were never, what they did to me never happened in the history of Harrisburg, never in the history of Pennsylvania, and some say in the history of this nation. But guess what? A year later, I was invited to the White House, and I went in March of this year. Last month, I was at U.S. Congress, and in June, I'll be at the United Nations by invite. I didn't invite myself, somebody else invited me, but I had to stand my ground. But how many other people? I couldn't have did it if I didn't have my family and church and the help of Almighty God. How many other people can't stand up to that and can't fight back and don't get lawyers that help them? The system's broke. I said the system's broke.
Yes, it is.
When we look at what has happened in our nation, and it crumbles day by day. Think about some of the words. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal. Well, what happens when truth is no longer self-evident? I'll leave you with that question. Think about that. The system's broke. And the sad part is, I've been a part of many rallies on the Capitol steps that seem to draw the biggest crowds. But you know what? This issue is of primary or paramount importance to all of us living in Pennsylvania. The sad thing is nobody cares until something happens to them. If Harrisburg and Philadelphia, if Pennsylvania doesn't stand up now, Harrisburg could be the next Ferguson. Philadelphia could be the next Baltimore. Why do people wait till something happens and then want to be reactive when today we're striving to be proactive? It's amazing. When you look at our system, look at some of this, and this is for the media, because in the media we always hear about black on black crime. But I just heard a recent statistic that says from 1980 to 2004, that long of a period, white murders are done by white people. White people have been murdered 84% of the time by white people. But you never hear nothing in the media about white on white crime. That's not a racist statement. It's talking about if you're going to say it one place, say it all the way across the board. Because what happens is when you don't say it, sentencing disparities and other things happen because we got to do something about urban violence. But all these school shootings did not happen in urban areas. And nobody seems to want to acknowledge that. And I love everybody. I've got every nationality in my family. If you knew my whole name, my first name's Italian, middle name is English, and last name is Irish. But if we're going to be the nation we say we are, we got to face some awful truths. Why, when we show riots on TV, why did we show the Huntington Beach riot? No people of color were involved in that riot. That never hit national news. And that was recent. This is what I'm saying. And the judiciary is just like every other branch of government. If you're going to be something, be it. Judiciary, I equate that with what? Justice? Is it justice or just us? We got it from today. Today can't be the end. Actually, today's the beginning. And we've got to challenge our family, our friends, and churches, and synagogues, and civil rights groups, and community groups, and block groups, and any other group you know of that involves human beings. We need to challenge them and tell them to step up. Because if we don't fix it now, guess what? When they step up and stand before a judge, they'll find out what we were talking about.
There you go.
I don't even have time to go into my case, and I know all of you out there have had situations. But the reality is who this nation was called to be, who it was created to be. We're to be an example. We were to be a light to the other nations. And it's got to be about more than money. I said it's got to be about more than money.
Yes, sir.
There's a thing in the Old Testament of the Holy Bible that talks about restorative justice. Restorative justice means if I steal your watch, I shouldn't be serving time in jail. I should restore that watch to you, or its equivalent value. Why are you going to throw somebody in jail for every little thing? Then that costs all this money to incarcerate them. Then they got this hanging over their head, and it just exacerbates the problem. That's the answer, restorative justice. But we're locking people away like animals. And then we go around to other nations and brag about how great we are. And some of them are laughing at us, some of them are mocking us, some of them are scratching their heads. So think about this on the election this year, not just next year, every year. We've got to challenge our communities to stop just voting when it's just a president. We've got to vote when it's a mayor, a commissioner, a governor, a president, school board, city council, judges on every level. We've got to get out and vote. I've heard different things about the Attorney General today, and somebody said she has to do certain things, and certain things she came into office and started to do, and that's part of that pushback. When you fight against certain things, you find out how much the system doesn't want to budge and how inflexible it is. And some people in power that try to entrench themselves or fight back against you. I don't know, when she started getting attacked, I said it could be because she's a female. That could be part of it. I definitely know it was part of it when she started saying I'm going to start going after people. None of us are without fault. None of us are perfect. We all have faults, blemishes, and things. But one thing is, when somebody comes into office, we not only got to hold them accountable, we got to help them. And if it's called upon that we can meet with her and help her to help the system work. I don't want to see anybody in office fail, because if they fail, we fail. Now it's sad. I was on the Governor's Advisory Commission for African American Affairs. Tom Corbett didn't listen to anything we said, and so he didn't get reelected. Had he listened, maybe things would have went better. So before I criticize, I try to help first and meet. But if people don't want to meet with us, if they don't want to hear us, then we have to make sure they look for a new job next election cycle. Y'all a bit too quiet for me. Because the reality is, if we don't register people to vote, and if we don't mobilize to vote, if we don't get in there and pull the lever and vote intelligently and vote for people that's trying to listen to us, we'll keep getting what we got. Isn't that the definition of insanity?
Absolutely.
To keep doing what we've always done and then expect something different?
Over and over.
I don't know about you, but I believe that America's at its most pivotal time in history. And not for one reason, for many reasons. But this right here, this today makes sense. And we have to capitalize on this, and we have to go back to our communities and meet with people and gather. And the next time, not double this and not triple this, quadruple this and beyond. And keep speaking, and keep emailing, and keep texting, and keep tweeting, and keep Facebooking, and keep Instagramming, and keep speaking, and demand equal protection and equal justice under the law.
Yes.
We were designed to be one nation, under God, indivisible, with what? Liberty and justice for all. So as I close, I just want to remind you again, we hold these truths to be self-evident. What happens when truth is no longer self-evident? I'll leave you with that question. And I pray for the United States of America. And may God help us to become the nation we were created to be. Because we owe it. We owe it to William Penn. I believe we owe it to Dr. King and all the freedom fighters. I believe we owe it to previous generations that fought for liberty. As well as we talk about our first responders, as well as our soldiers and troops in harm's way. But we owe it to our future generation. We owe it to our children, our grandchildren, and those coming after us. Because history will record what we did in our time. I can't, it's like I told young people at school one day, I was a school teacher, and I told them, I said, I couldn't help Dr. King. I wasn't old enough. But you know what? I'm not gonna let history record that I sat back and did nothing when things happened when it was my time to step up. Well, we can't do this alone, but together we can get this done. God bless you, have a wonderful day.
And it's a political office on a local level. I've never done it before, but I want to become more involved. And the first place to start is in the community. I'm an advocate for judicial reform. I've been pushing the petition for Justice Not Politics. It's on www.change.org. And it speaks to a conglomerate of issues which pretty much have already been covered. But I think the crux of the matter, the main part of it, is that we must hold prosecutors accountable. The prosecutors have the most power in the court system, and they have the least accountability. They send people to death row. They send people for life. They do whatever to win a conviction, and their role, their sovereign duty, should be to seek truth and justice. That we put them in these offices for us, not to represent their political interests and their advancement of their career. I have great concern for everyone, because I, for one, never realized what was going on in the court systems until I personally witnessed it myself, because I have a loved one right now who was wrongfully convicted, who is in a maximum security prison, sent many, many miles away. The case is under appeal, but you know, I saw the maneuverings that go in a court system, and you have to realize that the court system has all the advantage. They have the taxpayers' money. They have all the resources. And in order to fight them, you have to have money. You have to have a good lawyer. You have to know how to win in these court systems. And when the deck is so stacked against you, you know, he was one of the few cases who did not plead guilty, but did go to trial, and the trial was a sham, and now it's in the appeal process, so it's more money, more time. Meanwhile, he sits in a jail, maximum security, where there's stabbings every week. Sometimes I don't get phone calls because he's locked down. And I see it with so many cases that they really don't care about human lives. They're all interested in their careers, and that's not what the justice system should be about. And I just hope and pray that more people will join with us on this fight, because the strength is in numbers. And if we don't have the numbers to fight this change, I think it's going to take a while. But in any event, I will never quit as long as I have breath in my body. Thank you.
Millie. We were just talking on the way up to touch on what the bishop said. Bishop Sullivan was talking about, you know, restoration. We were talking about, you know, they used to put people in the army. I mean, if these people have some energy they need to get out, why don't they put these folks in jail in the army? You know, send them over to the Middle East, see how they like it there, right? But that's the kind of thing they're not doing. They're just warehousing them. And there, you know, there's no restoration process. The army is the perfect place for them. You know, that's because they get more money for them being housed in the prison, you know? They're getting money from the federal government. It's making jobs for the people working in the prison. It's all about the money, and that's, like I said before, capitalism just does not mix with freedom and with your health, and it has to be removed. Now we have Ben, Daddy Justice. He's one of the first videos I've ever seen that let me know that I was not insane, that there was something going on with the court system, because when you first get involved with it, you don't have a clue. And his videos, if you've never seen them, daddyjustice.com, he corners judges, and they are hysterical. Come on, Ben. He's a great videographer.
Thank you for letting me speak. I'll only take a moment. I'm not near the speaker, as you've already heard. And yes, judges are ridiculous, but they're on their own being ridiculous. I just point the camera at them and show it. I want to start off by saying I wore a judge's robe today, and I wore that to make a point. Putting a robe on doesn't make someone more honest, give them more integrity, or make them above the law. In fact, if anything, it makes them more susceptible to corruption. Any more than putting a hat on makes me a Texan, does putting a robe on make me someone you should trust. I want to say that, thank you. I want to say that I always begin, a couple times I've been asked to speak, is by saying that America makes the best fathers in the world and always has. That's something you won't pick up much nowadays. It's not popular to, and it's particularly in the biggest sprawl in judicial history in America, family courts. Completely unregulated, more money going in there than any other court. Faster growing than anything, and no accountability. But I will say this, putting a robe on somebody doesn't keep them honest, but putting a damn camera on them does.
There you go. Yep.
Any of you who have seen my videos know that I've been arrested as the minister has. I've been arrested many times.
Good for you.
I'm probably, good for me. That makes me doing something. I'm the only guy I'm sure here who's ever had Ed Marsico, the district attorney of Dauphin County, on his own initiate an expungement and erase any of my charges. I had that done, and I also had the Lancaster County district attorney, who's now a judge, expunge 6 charges, but that was not the largest percentage of them. And I've been convicted, and anybody who's ever sat in a courtroom, as I have, and watched police lie on the stand to get some chicken shit conviction against a guy because he's asking questions of a judge or a lawyer knows that we got problems. As I've told the district attorney on camera, if you're willing to put cops up there and lie to get me for criminal harassment or disorderly conduct because I put a camera on somebody, what will you do if you want to get somebody for murder? I mean, really? You're willing to commit felony perjury? I've been arrested many times, but before I picked up the camera, I was picked up a couple dozen times, and it was all going downhill. When I picked up the camera, I knew I was over already. I was planning on going to jail or dying because I was standing up against the system. And that was 10 years ago, and in 10 years I have never ceased to be amazed, as the Reverend said also, at the oppositional forces that join together. Boy, they might be politically oppositional in every other area, but if you stand up and start putting cameras at them, they join together like a pack of thieves. And I want to say that the problem is exasperated beyond measure by the fact that there are no cameras in courtrooms. Now, I say there's no cameras in courtrooms. Of course, there's cameras in the Supreme Court of Pennsylvania and the Superior Court of Pennsylvania. They show you what looks good for them. There's cameras for naturalizations and for retirement parties for judges. I've seen cameras in the courtroom. The only place there isn't cameras in the courtroom at all is where they're taking children from good fathers for profit, for government programs. And if you go in there, as I have, and ask questions in those areas where there are no cameras, you will be charged, as I have. And then the people who will go up and testify against you will be part of the system. They will be the only ones testifying against you. I want to talk real quickly about one special kind of court we have in Lancaster. It's called Family Business Court. This is where you go in, and there are 2 lawyers standing up front, and they talk to the judge, and they both represent facts, hearsay they would be called, that they weren't there to witness. They say, well, my client told me that he
don't
did
have
this.
that much invested.
And then the other guy says, well, my client told me that she did that. And the judge makes a sweeping decision that changes children's lives. The interesting thing about Lancaster County is there's no record being taken there. There's no transcriptionist. When I've asked for one, I've been told no. I have had my pockets turned inside out and been searched numerous times under the thought that I might have some type of recording device. What the hell are they doing in there that they don't want you to see? We know because now, I've also as a sideline run into what we call the flying monkeys who are dispatched when you stand up against the system, that being cops, security, sheriff's deputies, all of these people, and I've ended up filming them over 10 years, and what we're finding now is what we found is that they don't want to be filmed. They want to be filmed because they're murdering people in the streets. It's not all of a sudden it's happening, it's all of a sudden it's being filmed. And we will see the same thing in Lancaster County, and in every other county when we start filming. We're going to see what they're doing to destroy people, to drive men to suicide at a rate of 10 to 1 when going through divorce. I'll end by saying this. What do these three things have in common? Cash for kids. Arguably the most vicious, corrupt example in the history of Pennsylvania judiciary. The recent case we saw in Lancaster, in Philadelphia court, in the traffic court, where everybody knew if your friends are there, you get your tickets cleared up. How about the judge who was bribing, taking bribes to fix cases? What do they all have in common? The Judicial Conduct Board had nothing to do with outing them. The Judicial Conduct Board had nothing to do with it. The Judicial Conduct Board, you should know, does its job. Its job is to fight the appearance of impropriety. Their job is not to fight the impropriety. 95% of the complaints that come with them, they're able to, as they would say, exonerate the judge and cover for them. If the judge screwed the pooch so bad they can't, then 4% of them, they give them some kind of a letter, and maybe 1% they actually take action against. Leaving you out there with a judge that's pissed off because he knows you filed the complaint against him because he has the details of it, and lo and behold, who would that be? It's you. Now go back to that judge, having been vindicated, and tell me why more people don't file complaints. It's time that we have cameras in every courtroom in the state of Pennsylvania.
Yes, it is.
That's all I have. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Daddy Justice. DaddyJustice.com. There's a lot of tags. I should have everybody down here so I can have everybody's websites, because this is all about unification. So we all need to start tagging each other on each other's posts. We need to start sharing information. We need to start sharing each other's websites, Facebook, as you said, Instagram, what's that other, all those 1,001 other ways of social media. We need to start communicating and sharing this information, and not just that negativity that we all, I guess, love to see, because that's what we always go to. Not us, though. I know none of us were one of those people. Right next, I will see if Mr. Todd, is Todd available? I think we have Todd in the house. I saw him somewhere. Oh, there he is again. All right. Thank you.
Hey, you know what? Like they all said, everybody walking up here, it's the quality of the people we can start with, and then start going after more and more quality people. Obviously, we're all victims here. I'm a victim of helping out an innocent man that was in jail. A man that was reaching out to me who I never even met in my life. And what did I do? I did the right thing. I was following biblical law, the common law, the simplest, most basic, humane things to do to somebody incarcerated with 4 children. And I became a target, and they destroyed my life. But I'm a survivor, and I have no problems. Terance Healy and I met up 2 years ago. We broke their code to their 1.6 in the professional conduct. But the bottom line is this whole thing is, and one of the most craziest things in my head when I met Terance, when we were actually counter-surveilling, the FBI following us. The investigators that were following us, we had the same people tailing us and tagging us, and we knew what was going on. But what we were able to come up with is there's one common element, and there's one common element that actually infiltrated all 3 separations of power in all of our checks and balances. And that person can only be one person or one organization called the American Bar Association. They literally overthrew our government. There's governors from every state in the Bar Association. There's delegates from every state in our bar associations. They have their own constitution. Can you believe it? It happened on 10/16/1987, like Terance said, and it happened in Pennsylvania then. But it started in 1983 in New Jersey, and it ended in 2009. So the bottom line is this: where do we go from here? There can be no reform until we get our constitutional rights back, until the Constitution gets rebooted. The problem we're having is yes, we're not being heard. We're all victims here of this whole thing. We have to round up as many of the victims and all that to tell them, hey, help is on the way. The biggest part to this whole thing is the code's broken. We know who's behind it all. Every article you read, or every article you see on TV, ask yourself 2 questions. Simple. Who's the benefit from this article being in the press? A, financially, and B, power. And you're going to start figuring out who's behind it all. But guess what? The American Bar Association is owned by the banks. They're owned by the central banks. What's up with the foreclosure crisis? How come no bankers are going to jail? Right? 48, 50 million people lost their homes. There's the bottom line right there. What are they doing now? What's the next big stunt here? They're gonna be privatizing into these charter schools, only to train the kids stupid. But what are they doing? They want to make them private, just like the privatized jails. But guess what? It's about making money. That's the bottom line. Go start tracking back who owns all these privatized jails and who's going to start owning all these privatized schools. And actually, who's behind them all? You'll see politically how they're all tied in and how some of our highest top level people in our government are the owners of them and how they're funding them and they're making money hand over fist. Another issue I have too as far as the Bar Association, they won't even acknowledge us. Terance and I are so deep in our cases that we can't even get a lawyer to represent us because they have to follow the professional rules of conduct. Automatically, that violates our rights. So that's a major problem. We can't even get counsel if we wanted to get paid to pay for it. I'm not up here to tell you that every lawyer and every judge is a fraud, but the bottom line is they created an industry out of injustice. The American Bar Association made scripts. So everybody going through divorces or everybody going through foreclosure or any cases out there, they're scripted. You have to understand it's not you. It's nothing you did. You're in the vacuum. The scripts are written by the bar and one lawyer knows how to play it and just like it's served over the net to the other lawyer, and guess what? He knows how to answer it. And it's about driving you out of your money. It's about creating jobs for lawyers. That is the most sickest part about this whole thing. So the bottom line is this. Yes, we do need to gather more people that can reach out to other people, but we want good quality people that want to listen, people that want to learn, because it is a learning experience. I mean, me and Terance have been studying law. We bounce things back and forth at one another. We teamed up quite well, and actually, there's times where we get on each other about certain avenues we each want to go with it, and it's stressful, there's no doubt about it, but it's the system that we're involved in that fix is the most stressful out of all of it. So we have a common agenda to fix this thing, and when we get this thing fixed, it's going to give everybody their lives back, or at least if anybody goes into a courtroom, then they're being treated with respect. That's the bottom line. Humanity, you know, the privatized prisons are nothing more, like they were saying, like the bishop was saying, more or less like a warehouse of flesh. But again, who's making the money on them? That's the bottom line. And what they want to do is they are targeting the black community, without a doubt. And I can say that, they are targeting the black community. As when Kennedy was in president, one of the reasons why they assassinated him was the civil rights movement. And actually, once it was started, they were never going to stop it again. But they had to create a rule and a mechanism to control the justice system. They had to be able to control now, with the black lawyers, now to be black judges. How are they going to control them? How are they going to control the black cops to be black chiefs of police? One of the reasons why they killed John F. Kennedy. One of the reasons. But bottom line again is, they want to control the system. Racism makes money. Racism is a huge moneymaker. So they want us divided. They want us divided. It makes money. And that's the sad part about it. So all these riots that we're seeing on the news, the really problem isn't really the police. They were trained inadequately. Yes, they're trained not to recognize the constitutional rights. The bottom line is, it's really the lawyers behind the whole thing. They're the ones profiting from it. They're the ones making the money on it. And that's all I really kind of have to say. Research it and look into it. Terance has a great website on work2/to-be-done. Or just Google up Terance Healy, and you'll get on his site. He's got a 9-year diary of the tactics that they use. But more importantly, you have to understand, it's not you. They're going to tell you it's you. They're going to tell you you're crazy. They're going to tell you you're not of sound mind. But it's not. It's the system. It's done that way purposely. It was designed that way. It was designed that way to destroy. And we have to get our rights back. Because if we don't, there is no future for any of us. I don't care what skin color, what religion you are. That's true. So God bless all of you. Continue your fight, but you got to continue to educate yourselves along the way. And you're gonna really truly see, as some of the things I told you, if you start Googling some things up, you know, and I'm a big Kane supporter and Tom Wolf supporter, because I don't want a revolution. I want an industrial revolution. I'm behind Tom Wolf 100%. We got to get people back to work. We got to get the innocent people out of jails and get them back to work. We have the technology. There's no reason why we're not making our own steel here in America anymore. We have the ingenuity, we have the labor, the manpower, and the smarts. And we are, like the Bishop said, we are the laughing stock of the world. How could this great country be with the revolution and the Star Spangled Banner and the July 4th parties and Memorial Day picnics and all that? Hey, let me tell you something. It's all front. It's all farce. Truly. Our whole government is undermined by the American Bar Association. They're a government inside our government, and that's where we got to take out the trash. Thank you.
That's the point of this. That's my sign over there says judicial accountability, not immunity. So we want to take a picture, and so we want everybody to get in one spot. I'm going to let Cedric, he wants everybody to come up here.